Edgar Cayce's lost prophecies about the end times. Warning, what you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about the end times. Edgar Cayce saw what's coming, and if you're watching this right now, your soul already knows why you're here. There are prophecies that were never meant to be forgotten. Visions so powerful, so precise that they were buried, hidden away from the masses. And tonight, we're bringing them back into the light. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, entered trance states and spoke of events that would shake the very foundation of our world. But here's what they don't tell you. Some of his most disturbing prophecies were deliberately kept out of mainstream discussion. The ones about the end times. The ones about right now. If you've been feeling it, that strange pull in your chest, that unexplainable sense that something massive is shifting beneath the surface of reality, you're not imagining it. You're awakening to what Cayce tried to warn us about decades ago. And the signs he described, they're no longer distant whispers. They're screaming all around us. Before we go deeper, let me ask you something. Have you noticed how time feels different lately? How days blur together? How synchronicities are increasing? How the veil between worlds seems thinner than ever? That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. You were guided here because your higher self knows you're ready for what comes next. Edgar Cayce wasn't just a psychic. He was a bridge between dimensions. A channel for knowledge that transcended human understanding. Between 1900 and 1945, he gave over 14,000 readings while in a self-induced trance. But it was his prophecies about earth changes and the end times that left even his closest followers speechless. These weren't vague predictions. They were detailed blueprints of transformation, destruction, and ultimately, rebirth. Let's start with what he saw for the geography of our planet. Cayce predicted that the Earth itself would undergo massive physical changes. He spoke of lands rising from the ocean and others sinking beneath the waves. He said the western portion of America would be broken up, that the greater portion of Japan would go into the sea, that northern Europe would be changed in the blink of an eye. And here's where it gets chilling. He said these changes would begin with subtle signs. Tremors in places that rarely shake. Volcanic activity where it's been dormant for centuries. And climate patterns that defy all scientific models. Look around you. Are we not witnessing exactly that? Earthquakes in unusual locations, volcanoes awakening after hundreds of years of silence, weather systems that baffle meteorologists. Cayce didn't just predict these events. He gave us the timeline, and according to his readings, the acceleration would happen when humanity reached a specific vibrational frequency, a collective consciousness shift. That shift, it's happening now. But the physical changes are only the surface. Cayce went much deeper. He spoke about the spiritual warfare that would intensify in the final days. Not the kind you see in movies, but the invisible battle for human consciousness. He said that dark forces would attempt to keep humanity asleep, distracted, disconnected from their divine nature. And that those who were meant to awaken would face resistance, not just from the outside world, but from within their own minds and lives. Does this resonate with you? Have you been experiencing unusual opposition lately? Relationships falling apart, unexpected obstacles, a feeling that something is trying to pull you back into old patterns? That's not punishment. That's the test Cayce warned about. The universe is asking, are you truly ready to step into your purpose, or will you retreat back into comfortable illusion? Now, here's where Cayce's prophecies become almost unbearably relevant. He spoke about a time when humanity would face a choice. Not a physical choice, but a soul choice. He called it the Great Division. A moment when people would unconsciously sort themselves into two camps. Those who choose fear, control, and materialism, and those who choose love, freedom, and spiritual truth. He said this division wouldn't be obvious at first. It would happen quietly, subtly, through the decisions we make every single day, and he warned that those on the path of awakening would feel isolated. They would be called crazy, conspiracy theorists, too sensitive, too spiritual. But he also promised that this isolation was temporary, that there would come a moment when the awakened ones would find each other, when they would recognize each other by the light in their eyes, by the frequency they carry. If you're watching this, you're part of that tribe. You're one of the ones Cayce spoke about. If this is resonating with you on a soul level, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists for seekers like you. For the ones brave enough to look beyond the veil. Don't let the algorithm hide these messages from you. Subscribe and turn on notifications because what we're uncovering here is not meant for everyone. only those ready to remember. Let's talk about one of Cayce's most cryptic and disturbing prophecies. He spoke about the return of ancient knowledge. He said that before the end times, hidden records would be discovered. Records from Atlantis, from ancient Egypt, from civilizations we've forgotten entirely. And these records would contain technology and wisdom far beyond what modern humanity possesses. But here's the twist. He said this knowledge would be released when humanity was on the brink, when we needed it most, but also when we were most vulnerable to misusing it. Think about what's happening right now with artificial intelligence, quantum computing, genetic engineering, technologies emerging at breakneck speed. Are these truly modern inventions, or are we rediscovering what was once lost? Cayce suggested that nothing is truly new, that we're in a cycle, repeating patterns from ancient times. And the end times are not the end of everything. They're the end of this cycle, before a new one begins. He also spoke about celestial events, not just asteroids or solar flares, but cosmic alignments that would trigger shifts in human consciousness. He said there would be signs in the heavens that ancient peoples understood, but modern humans have forgotten how to read. Unusual planetary alignments, stars behaving strangely, phenomena in the sky that science struggles to explain. And those who are attuned, those whose third eye is opening, would feel these cosmic shifts in their bodies, in their dreams, in their waking visions. Have your dreams become more vivid lately? More prophetic? Are you seeing symbols, numbers, messages that feel like they're coming from somewhere beyond your conscious mind? Cayce would tell you that's not your imagination. That's your soul remembering. That's the cosmic download beginning. But perhaps the most controversial of Cayce's end times prophecies involves the return of beings from other realms. He spoke about this carefully, knowing how it would sound. He said that as the veil thinned, as the frequency of Earth raised, we would begin to have more contact with interdimensional beings. Some would be guides, helpers, ancient souls returning to assist in the transition. Others would be tricksters, entities feeding off fear and chaos. And humans would need to develop spiritual discernment like never before. He warned that many would be deceived, that false prophets and false teachings would multiply, that it would become harder and harder to distinguish truth from illusion. But he also gave us the key. Truth resonates in the heart, not the mind. If something makes you afraid, if it asks you to give away your power, if it promises easy salvation without inner work, it's not true guidance. Real spiritual truth empowers you. It reminds you of your divinity. It asks you to take responsibility for your own consciousness. Now, I need to share something that most people don't know about Cayce's readings. In his private sessions, the ones not widely published, he spoke about specific souls who would incarnate during the end times. Souls who had been preparing for this moment for lifetimes. He called them the Forerunners. Old souls who volunteered to be here during the most chaotic, most transformative period in human history. Not because it would be easy, but because their presence was essential. These souls would be recognizable by certain traits. They would feel out of place in conventional society. They would have a deep, often painful sensitivity to energy. They would struggle with the density of this world, often facing depression, anxiety, or physical ailments that medicine couldn't fully explain. But beneath that struggle would be an unshakable knowing, an inner certainty that they're here for a reason, even if that reason isn't fully clear yet. If you're feeling a chill run down your spine right now, if tears are forming in your eyes, that's your confirmation. You're one of them. You're one of the souls Cayce spoke about. And everything you've been through, every hardship, every dark night of the soul, has been preparation for what's coming. Cayce also revealed something profound about the nature of the end times themselves. He said that while the prophecies described destruction and chaos, that wasn't the whole picture. He said the end times were actually a birth process, that humanity was like a baby in the womb, and what we're experiencing now are the contractions, painful, intense, unavoidable, but necessary for the birth of a new consciousness. He described a future Earth where those who made it through the transition would live in a completely different reality. Not a physical utopia, but a world where human consciousness operated at a higher frequency, where telepathy was normal, where healing happened through energy and intention, where the illusion of separation had dissolved, and humanity remembered its connection to all life, to the Earth, to the cosmos, to Source itself. But he was very clear. Not everyone would make this transition. Not because they weren't worthy, but because their souls chose a different path. He spoke about parallel realities, timelines splitting, souls choosing different experiences based on their level of consciousness. And he said that those who awakened would need to release attachment to saving everyone. That each soul has its own journey, its own timing. This is one of the hardest lessons for awakened beings. You can see what's happening. You can feel the urgency. And you desperately want to wake up your loved ones, your friends, your family. But Cayce would remind you, you cannot force spiritual awakening. You can only embody your truth so brightly that others are inspired by your light. Your job is not to convert. Your job is to remember who you are and live from that truth. Let's address the elephant in the room. Dates. Cayce gave some specific time frames for certain events, and many of them didn't manifest exactly as predicted. Critics use this to discredit everything he said. But here's what they misunderstand. Prophecy is not set in stone. The future is fluid, shaped by collective consciousness. Cayce himself said that prophecies were warnings, probabilities, not certainties, and that human free will could alter timelines. So yes, some of his predicted dates passed without dramatic events. But the themes he described, the patterns, the spiritual dynamics, those are unfolding with eerie accuracy. The land changes are happening, just more gradually than expected. The consciousness shift is happening, just in waves rather than a single moment. The division of humanity is happening. We see it in every aspect of society. Cayce also spoke about the role of meditation and prayer during the end times. He said that those who maintained a strong spiritual practice would be able to navigate the chaos with grace, that they would become anchors of light in the storm. He described group meditations as particularly powerful, saying that when awakened individuals came together in unified intention, they could literally shift the trajectory of Earth's future. This is why communities like this one matter so much. We're not just sharing information. We're creating a morphic field of consciousness. Every person who watches this video, who resonates with these truths, who commits to their own awakening, adds to the collective light. You are not a passive observer of the end times. You are an active participant in the transformation. And speaking of this community, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. We're building something sacred here, a space where truth seekers can find each other, where ancient wisdom meets modern revelation. Hit that subscribe button and join us. Your soul will thank you. One of Cayce's most beautiful prophecies is about the children being born during this time. He called them the new root race, souls incarnating with different DNA, different capabilities, different levels of consciousness. He said these children would be born remembering who they are, that they wouldn't need to spend decades unlearning conditioning because they would come in already awake. And we're seeing this, aren't we? Children who seem wise beyond their years. Kids who talk about past lives, who see energy, who possess intuitive gifts that previous generations had to work lifetimes to develop. Cayce said these children were the bridge to the new earth, that our job as the older souls is to protect them, support them, and learn from them. He also warned about systems that would try to suppress these children. Educational systems designed to conform rather than liberate. Medical systems quick to diagnose and medicate rather than understand. Social systems that pathologize sensitivity and spiritual awareness. And he said that awakened adults would need to become fierce protectors of these young souls, creating alternative spaces where they could thrive. Now, let's talk about one of Cayce's darkest prophecies. He spoke about a time of great tribulation where the comfortable structures of society would collapse. Economic systems failing, governments losing control, resources becoming scarce. And in that chaos, humanity would face its shadow collectively. All the greed, all the corruption, all the imbalances that have been hidden would be exposed and would need to be confronted. But even in this dark prophecy, Cayce offered hope. He said that this collapse was necessary, that the old systems were built on separation and control, and they had to fall for something new to emerge. He said that those who had been doing their inner work, who had been healing their own shadows, would be able to hold space for others during this time. That they would become the healers, the teachers, the leaders of the new paradigm. Are you feeling that call? That sense that you're being prepared for something bigger than yourself? That's not ego. That's your soul's mission activating. Cayce would tell you to trust it, to develop your gifts, to strengthen your connection to Source. Because when the structures fall, when people are scared and confused, they're going to need someone who can stand in the storm and say, I've been preparing for this. Follow me into the light. Cayce was also very specific about the importance of certain geographic locations during the end times. He said that some areas would be safer than others, not just physically but energetically. That there were power spots on the planet, ancient sacred sites, where the veil was thinner and spiritual energy was stronger. And that awakened souls would feel called to migrate to these places, often without fully understanding why. Have you been feeling a pull to relocate? A sense that you're not where you're supposed to be? That's not restlessness. That's your soul's GPS activating. Cayce would encourage you to trust that guidance, to follow the subtle nudges, even when they don't make logical sense. The universe is positioning its pieces on the chessboard, and you need to be where you're meant to be. But he also cautioned against spiritual bypassing, against the idea that you can just move to a safe location and everything will be fine. He said that the real safety comes from inner alignment, from resolving your karma, from healing your wounds, from raising your vibration, because ultimately, your consciousness determines your experience. Two people can stand in the same location during a crisis and have completely different experiences based on their internal state. One of the most profound aspects of Cayce's teachings is his emphasis on personal responsibility. He never promoted a savior mentality. He didn't say to wait for Jesus or aliens or enlightened masters to come fix everything. He said that humanity created this mess through collective unconsciousness, and humanity would have to clean it up through collective awakening. Each individual doing their part. Each soul taking responsibility for their own consciousness. This is the path of the spiritual warrior. Not waiting to be rescued. Not blaming external forces, but standing in your power, doing your inner work, and becoming a vessel for divine light. Cayce would tell you that you are more powerful than you've been led to believe, that your thoughts, your emotions, your intentions create ripples in the fabric of reality, and that by mastering your own energy, you contribute to the healing of the entire planet. As we move deeper into the end times, Cayce described, the intensity is only going to increase. The contrast between light and dark will become more pronounced. The challenges will become more demanding, but so will the miracles. So will the synchronicities. So will the evidence that we are living in a divinely orchestrated transformation. Cayce's final message about the end times was one of profound hope. He said that those who made it through, those who stayed anchored in love and truth, would witness the birth of a golden age. Not immediately, not without difficulty, but eventually. He said that the pain we're experiencing now is the labor pain of a new world being born, and that on the other side of this darkness is a light more beautiful than we can currently imagine. So if you're feeling exhausted, if you're wondering if you can keep going, if you're questioning whether any of this matters, let me remind you of what Cayce saw. He saw you. He saw this moment. He saw the awakened ones holding the light during the darkest hour. And he saw victory, not victory over enemies, but victory over illusion. The triumph of consciousness. The return to unity. You were born for this. Every lifetime has been preparing you for this. And your presence here, right now, reading these words, is no accident. You are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Trust the divine plan. Before you go, I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me what resonated most with you. We are creating a network of awakened souls, and your participation matters. Together, we are stronger. Together, we are the light that Cayce prophesied about. Don't let this message disappear into the algorithm. Take action now. The sleeping prophet is no longer sleeping. His words are alive, pulsing through the collective consciousness, waiting to be remembered. And you are the rememberer. You are the one who chose to be here during the most extraordinary time in human history. Edgar Cayce saw you coming. And now it's time for you to see yourself. The end times are not the end. They are the beginning of everything you've been waiting for. Welcome home, Lightworker. Your mission has begun.